Welcome back to another episode of I'm a Software Engineer. What next? Thanks for joining me again, Matt.
Good to be here again, James. It's been 24 hours less than we last spoke.
Well, if you're a keen listener, it would be at least a week between episodes. So, but yes, we do tend to do them sporadically.
In a block.
But they don't have to know that. They don't have to know that.
We won't tell anyone. We won't tell anyone.
No, you haven't moved house yet.
No, I haven't moved house.
Okay, I'm going to get straight into it. Today we're joined by Kate Catlin. She's a senior product manager working at the intersection of AI and developer experience. Kate didn't follow a straight line into tech. She started in environmental activism, then leaned to code through an intense apprenticeship, became an Android developer, founded a mission-driven startup to make tech more inclusive, and eventually moved into product roles at CircleCI and GitHub. Along the way, Kate has reinvented her career multiple times. In this episode, we explore how she made those decisions, the fear and uncertainty behind them, and what she's learned about building a meaningful, resilient career in tech. Kate, thanks for joining us. Hopefully that intro gave a little summary of your career so far, but feel free to correct me if I got anything wrong there.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm already having fun. That was a great introduction. That was way more details than we had talked about leading up to this. I feel famous that you found all this information out online.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing what you can uncover.
The internet's a glorious place, isn't it?
It certainly is. Yeah, I didn't find anything that you wouldn't want to read about. Now, do you want to start with, like, maybe we just go back to where this all began to you, or maybe even sort of where you first got introduced to software engineering?
Yeah. So there I was in college, determined to stop climate change for the entire world. But I had done a lot of volunteering and a lot of political activism and just didn't feel like I was making an impact. So I started thinking about social entrepreneurship, and I majored in economics and, like, how can I be part of the green economy and moving really, pro-social efforts forward through that. So post-college, I joined a very cool program called Venture for America, which, if you haven't heard of it, is now ended. But it was brilliant. And it was kind of like Teach for America, but for startups. So I moved to Detroit, Michigan, to work for a startup there and learn about entrepreneurship along the way, with the intention of eventually starting my own pro-social startup. And I absolutely fell in to working at a coding boot camp as part of that fellowship. And that's where I took my first classes in coding for free. And since I didn't really have that much of a background, that was a big mindset shift for me. Turns out I loved it. I'd taken a lot of math in college. My brain works well in that way. It's fun, right? It's like a dopamine hit to build things. I was having a great time. I transitioned to a full-time apprenticeship and then eventually into being a full-time software developer, and that's how I fell into tech.
And it was a wagon, or what? They're still around today, aren't they?
Two different boot camps.
Two different boot
We haven't
camps.
even gotten into the second one yet. The first one was called Grand Circus Detroit, and that's where I got my first coding class experience there. And then eventually, I'm sure we'll get to this part of the story, but I had been a developer for a flash in the pan moment, and then realized, this is really fun to learn, but the reality of the day-to-day developer experience is not actually matching with the fact that I just like to talk to people all day. And so transitioned into sales, which was much more, a combination of understanding the technical background, but also being very extroverted and talking with a lot of other humans. And then eventually tried to start my own company. But I had learned Java and Android in my first set of coding experiences, and that does not translate well to starting a web startup. So at that point, I ended up going to a second coding boot camp, which was called Le Wagon. And this one that I went to is actually based in Bali. So I had a wonderful time learning Ruby on a beach in Bali. Yeah, it was a great experience. Started my startup out of that boot camp, hired some other engineers from the boot camp to work with me, and the rest is history.
So I want to pick up on this a little bit because when I've hired a lot of people over the years, and when I was at Digital Ventures, we hired one guy from Le Wagon here in London, and he was fantastic. And he said, "Oh, there's a bunch of other people like me at Le Wagon," and it was almost true. I mean, there was a bunch of other really good people there, and some of them we hired. But one of the things that I learned out of that was this idea of going fishing in different pools. There's a certain kind of person that goes through the classic STEM kind of, experience, right? And it's not as diverse as you might hope. And one of the really interesting things I found out about the coding schools, and we went looking for this subsequently in coding schools, was there's a bunch of people, and I'm going to leave the diversity angle out of it for a second because I actually think it's a different thing that's even is interesting, which is people come into those coding schools with a completely different set of experiences than most software engineers. And so what they bring is not your classic diversity dimensions that you might be selecting on. Sorry, they come with diversity of thought, right? Because they have such a different background. And so we pulled a bunch of people out of Lowagan in London, and they were fantastic. Right, because they were, and I don't actually not an ad for Lowagan or any by any stretch of the imagination, but were they the best ever software engineer that I'd worked with? Maybe not, but they were absolutely. At school when you're picking a team in the playground and the two captains stand up and you pick, I'll have you. Like these couple of people were always the first person picked because they were the kind of person you wanted to have on your team because they just had a different outlook. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of those coding schools, and mainly because people who do them are looking for a career change. Right? They're looking to do something different. They've done a thing and then they're looking to do something else. And I think that diversity of thought is really powerful.
Oh, I so agree with that. The different backgrounds that people come from when they go through developer boot camps and how they end up there just gives them such a richness of experience. And especially like once you're in the real world, working in an environment where you have to work with product managers, where you're getting requests from sales, where you need to understand something beyond just writing the code, it can be extremely helpful. And don't get me wrong, I've worked with brilliant engineers who have, the classic Bachelor of Science with computer science. I've also worked with really brilliant engineers who majored in philosophy or majored in geography or majored in photography and went back and learned coding later and just something snapped. And they can be extremely effective and just as good at coding as those who come from the traditional background.
Yeah, I agree. I want to ask you one quick question before we move on here, because I'm a big believer that failure is a better teacher than success. And I was watching your face when you said you had a startup, and I don't know did it fail or did it how did it go?
It depends by what you mean by failure.
well, no, I'm asking. I wasn't suggesting it failed. I just want to know how it went because I was actually when I was reading this. The running sheet, I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is an interesting story. She's had an exit, and that sounds really cool. Let's talk about that. But the look on your face, though, wasn't. I was trying to read the look on your face, and so I'm not sure whether it was a success or a failure.
So let's talk about the evolution of what came to be called Find My Flock. So the original version of it was a 501c3 nonprofit called Women Rising, and the whole idea was that you could sign up if you were a woman in tech and be matched with two other women to go out and have coffee with in a business networking environment. So you could ask some questions about what's your experience. You could make a friend. You could just have a support network in that environment. The second thing it did is if you had a specific question, like, how do I ask for a raise? You could be matched up with someone who was in your industry, but at a higher level for a mentorship call. And I, as a future product manager, was reading through the questions that were getting asked this program because it had taken off. And we were doing, at one point, dozens of these connections per month. And the question over and over again was, how do I find a new job where things are more positive for me? And so that got my gears turning where I was like, well, this seems to be like quite a niche that a lot of people are looking for. So hence that led to what became called Find My Flock. And the idea was like finding a work environment that was more fit to your cultural values, whatever they may be. And in America, we are equal opportunity employers. Everyone was invited to apply to all of the jobs listed on the website. But we did do some UXing to make it more welcoming to women. So, for example, one thing we know from studies is that women are less likely to apply for a job if they don't meet every single bullet point that is listed on desired experience. So we asked employers, you pick two. You want 3 years of Ruby experience and a background in like API development? Great. You get those two. And then what we would do is if there was someone in the network who was on the website who matched those skills and experiences, we would outreach to them and automatically email them and say, hey, you might be a fit for this role. So doing a little bit more like, hand holding and encouragement of people to apply to jobs that they might not have otherwise. So things were going well. At first, it was a lot of like Kate, woman behind the curtain doing a lot of this manually. I tried more and more to automate. That's where creating the website and developing the website and making it all happen automatically happened. And eventually I just ran out of money, It turns out paying engineers is pretty expensive, which it should be because their work is very valuable. And so while we did have some amazing, huge clients, we ended up not making it financially. So at that point, I looked around and I said, okay, well, it sure was fun to, as a former developer, build a product that was friendly for other developers. So where else could I do that? And as part of building this website, one thing that we had used was CircleCI for our CI tooling. And I hated their UI. I thought it was so confusing, especially as, a junior developer. I was like, this doesn't make sense unless you've worked in this industry for 10 years. So I wrote them a very passionate cover letter for a job that I was absolutely not qualified for. But I talked all about how, hey, I'm really passionate about UIs. I think I can make this better for you. And by some miracle of fate, their VP of product at the time was interested in overhauling their entire UI, hired me for a job that didn't exist. And that was how I started my product manager career.
That's
That
super
is very
cool.
cool. Yeah, it's very cool. My very first job, I got exactly, a long time ago, 1994. But I did exactly the same thing. I saw an article in the paper and I wrote to the CEO, actually wrote a letter, back in the old days when letters were a thing, paper letter, signed it. And he rang me the day after I'd sent it and said, come down for an interview. So it's funny. I encourage people to do this actually when I'm coaching people and they want to get a job. Sending a letter to someone and actually, not handwriting it, but signing it and putting it in an envelope and sending it to someone. And so surprisingly, particularly if you handwrite the envelope, right? If you handwrite on the envelope, if that goes into someone's inbox, they're going to look at it, right? They're going to look at it. And in the era of AI slop, okay, where thousands and thousands of people are applying with push button, low quality resumes, doing that sort of proactive. When you said, because this whole thing about women not signing up or not applying for jobs if they don't have all all the things on the list, I've heard this many, many times, and I'm fascinated by how to hack this so that this isn't a problem. So we can have more diverse folks apply for jobs. And your idea there is genius. And I'm curious, did that work? Just knocking the criteria down to 2 or 3 things. Did that work?
I think we got a lot more people to apply to jobs than would have otherwise. And again, everyone was welcome to apply to these jobs. But I will say the employers who worked with us seemed to really like us and really loved getting more people to apply from backgrounds that maybe wouldn't have otherwise.
That's gone in the back of my mind as a hack for the future. It's a great idea.
I really like these days where there's more separation of here's things you have to have for real. Don't even bother to apply if you don't have these. But then here's a longer list of hey, these are nice to haves. And I really appreciate when employers today call that out and say we'd like you to have all of this. The ideal candidate would have all of this, but we encourage everybody to apply no matter what.
Kate, you moved to CircleCI. And from when you were Find My Flock, you were a bit of everything, I assume. You were product, you were software engineering, you were CEO, did you move into a role at CircleCI as a product manager, or did you come in, how did you make that transition, and how did that go for you? Were you confident that product management was what you wanted to do?
Confident, no. I will say that being a founder, you do get to experience it all, don't you? I was writing code, I was sort of engineering managing, I was project managing, I was product managing, I was managing finances, although I did have a bookkeeper. You really do it all. And the part that I liked the most was deciding which feature to ship next. And so I had some inkling that would be the part that I liked about product management. This career is so much different than I could have imagined. And I had no experience with it before I went in, but I have found that I really loved it. So my first role at CircleCI was as a product manager, but about as junior as you could hire a product manager for an SF-based technology company. And I think at first they sort of expected me to just sort of be an intern. But as you might be able to tell from this podcast so far, I don't do that well. So I stepped into more and more leadership pretty quickly. And, fortunately for me, had a terrific manager who was I see you, I see the leadership going on here, and I'm just going to let you go and just give you some banks to your river to go in the right direction. But that was amazing. And then so quickly grew up into a senior product manager, moved on to more roles, and etc.
I love that metaphor, to give you some banks to your river. I've got a word here that it's one of my favorite words, intuition. And you mentioned good product intuition. So one of the things that I'm always looking for is how do I manage complexity? How do I get things simpler? What signals can I go looking for in the noise? And you mentioned, there's this phrase here, good product intuition. And I'm just really curious, what does that mean? What does good product intuition mean to you?
What a good question. Okay, I would say that good product intuition is understanding the real problem that people are trying to solve. There are a lot of people who misinterpret intuition as, I know what I want to do with this product, or I know what I want you to want to do with my product, which is a very, very common hole to fall in. But I think real intuition comes from getting on the phone with the users that you are shipping a product for, approaching with pure curiosity, assuming you're wrong, asking questions, and trying to get a sense of like, what is it that you're really trying to do here? Because I was on a call just this morning, and I can't tell you about what, but I had someone telling me, I need this specific data point. But the real thing they need is not this specific data point. It's this other narrative underneath that data point that they're trying to solve. And that's really the meat of the issue that we need to get to. And so it's, can you look beyond what you want them to want and what they say they want to what they really need and will use?
I have a phrase, a go-to phrase, and I use it all the time. Because what you're describing there with product managers, you see the same thing with software engineers. They'll come to you with an answer, and they're trying to fix something or trying to do a thing. And my go-to statement or go-to question in that moment is, what's the question that's the answer to? And just simply asking that question. Did I frighten you? Just simply asking that question.
That's a good phrase.
In that way, like, what's the question this is the answer to? And it's really good in meetings as well. When you hear people talking across each other, you can say, okay, what's the question this is the answer to? Like, are we asking, do we each have the same question in mind that we're answering in this moment? And what you described is the product manager version of the same thing.
I'm going to steal that one.
That's a great like summary. I think a lot of people, and even me, I'm guilty of thinking like almost product taste. People's product taste is good or bad, yet it's really just an obsession with the customer, isn't it? And
I want to continue on this theme a little bit. One more question. You've been working at CircleCI. That's a pretty successful company, a category creator really in that domain. These days you're at GitHub, and if there was a category creator, GitHub was almost the category creator of all category creators in dev tools for sure. As a PM working with engineers who are doing pretty interesting things and having big impact, what do you think engineers get right about PMs and get wrong about PMs?
Ooh, gosh, this question depends so much on the product manager that you're working with, because in the same way that there's infinite ways to be a leader, there's also infinite ways to be a product manager. So I see some product managers really excelling at the operations side. I see some product managers excelling at the user interview side, some excel at quantitative metrics, et cetera. And so how you relate to your product manager depends on who your product manager is, in the same way that how I relate to my engineering team flexes depending on who my engineering team is. And I've had vastly different experiences with the right way to work with engineers depending on the team that I'm attached to at the time. I think
Are there any common themes?
Yeah, I think a common theme is that the belief that product managers have to be the one to come up with all of the ideas. And I think that that's a mistake on both the PM side and the engineer side. I personally love nothing more than when my engineers are super excited about the product. Like if they have ideas, if they have ways to find solutions, I absolutely want to hear them. And I think that needs to be a close feedback loop between the two teams to talk about it in general. I think that engineers, I view my job as a product manager to bring the problem and say, I talked to 12 customers, they're saying this, but it seems like they really want this. Is there another way for us to resolve it? And I can make up all the solutions if you want me to, but it's just a sheer matter of math that 12 brains is more brains than one brain. And so if we have more ideas coming from more people, then that is desirable and good. And so you really need a culture of everyone participating in that, or at least the most effective teams that I've been a part of really respect that balance of we respect that Kate's coming to us with a deep understanding of the customers, a deep understanding of the data, and a deep understanding of the problem. And we are all here together to work out what the solution would be.
The bit I like there is the bring the problem. Right. I mean, I own the problem, right, and be the one who can communicate the problem. I think that's key. I think that's key, and ensure everyone's got that view of what the real problem is.
Yeah, and I think I'll add one more thing to that. Brilliant engineer, one of the engineers that I respect most in the entire world, who I've worked with, at one point tried to transition to product management. And one of the reflections that he had was, oh my God, I thought everyone using this product was as technical as I am. And so it was he had been this technical lead for so long, and they had been thinking about solutions in terms of I assume that everyone else will just get it the same way that I do. And it was a very rude awakening, when you bring engineers to these calls and they listen to these customers saying why can't I just click a button? And they're like, why would that work? And it's because not everyone is an in-depth understanding of the product that you have, or even the technical depth that you have. And so I think That is a common mistake that engineers make in terms of relating to product, is assuming everyone else will get it or to be as technically adept as they are. And so that's one way that I would request engineers to work a little differently, is to like, hey, join user calls, go listen, keep an open mind with the fact that no one else knows this product as well as you do. Even if you're working on dev tools.
I was about to say, it must be quite challenging work on dev tools in particular.
Do you know what's funny? GitHub, I mean, again, full transparency, no financial interest, no shares to declare anything. But as you were saying that, I was just thinking, I don't know of any products like GitHub that I don't like swear at. And I really don't. Like Git in particular and GitHub, right? I very rarely find myself yelling at it. I think one day recently I was trying to do like a private token thing so I could have a private repo used in a CI pipeline on fly.io, and it was like, okay, this is actually pretty challenging to get this right, but it wasn't crazy. Like it was actually even the most esoteric thing I could find. It was just occurring to me, it's like, yeah, GitHub is actually really, really tight. It's like a good band, right? It does what it does it really well, and I never infuriated by it.
That should be a new metric we have for success: infuriation.
Yeah. There's some products that I use, and I just sit there just completely and utterly infuriated by them, because it's like you said, why doesn't it just do this, right? You can sort of see the solution. And anyway, so kudos to the team, because I think GitHub's pretty good in that regard.
Thank you so much. And I think that's something that we constantly have to keep in mind at GitHub is like, I want to caveat here, I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer, but, GitHub, we are serving people who are PhDs in computer science and have worked in tech and have been writing code since they were 3. And we are also serving people who just had their first day of a coding boot camp and are learning what GitHub is entirely. And so when you're serving that breadth of people working in the software industry, you have to think a little differently about how you structure design and how you structure, accessibility and approachability of your product.
Yeah, I had never considered it before until this conversation, but you're absolutely right. You are going to get kids at school through to veterans using it on a daily basis. So, yeah. In our previous episode, we spoke to Stuart Bewley, who's a communications and presentation specialist. He does trainings, an ex-actor. He does training, helps everyone from engineers through to executives on their communication skills. One of the things that we took out of it was that it's a real value add that engineers can get to be able to talk to people other than just write code, right? To be able to communicate their story. And the chat we had yesterday and the story here is fantastic. And I'm just interested in your experience in how you came to be standing up in front of auditoriums of thousands of people talking about Copilot. Because it's a pretty interesting story.
Oh, yeah. So I would say that I sort of got discovered in the year of 2025 based off of one very good demo. And then off of that demo, I got added to one talk, which then got me added to another talk, which then got me added to another talk. And so at this point, I think I've distilled it into a few pieces of advice that I would give to other people. And I recently wrote a blog about this if anyone's interested in looking it up. But I think
it'll
one...
be in the show notes.
You rock. Thanks. So I think number one piece of advice, just bring a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. It's really hard to listen to someone give a demo if they're bringing the energy of a fax machine. Like you want to be like so stoked. And I'm not saying change your personality at all. Like I am an excited version of me. You're an excited version of you. But like figure out what excited means to you and just drink a full cup of coffee if that's your jam beforehand, or at least bring the energy of a full cup of coffee to what you're presenting. And this is tough because look, I'm an over-enthusiastic person. I'm very aware of how uncool it is to be an over-enthusiastic person. But I'll tell you what, it makes you a better public speaker. And I think number 2 is just having a really solid and relatable demo. And this brings it back to remembering that not everyone is as technical as you are, right? Like if you're explaining something super in depth for why it matters to a hypothetical use case for observability, for people who would only understand it if they'd worked in observability for 10 years, it's not going to resonate with anyone else. So one recent demo that I was giving when I was building models evaluation tooling in our AI space was I explained the whole thing through getting a model to suggest more Taylor Swift songs. Everyone can understand Taylor Swift songs. People from every part of the company are like, I get it. You want AI to give me more Taylor Swift songs. And it's exciting for me to talk about. It's a little bit of humor for other people to relate to. And this is like, now I understand evaluations. And so find something you can demo that everyone can relate to that is maybe a little less technical or at least a little funny. And then I would say, third, AI is very good at writing. So have AI write your first draft, but don't let it write your final draft. There's a lot of like gobbledygook that comes out of AI. There's a lot of, it's just not always straight to the point sometimes. So go back and rewrite every single word in your own words, how you would explain it to a friend. And I literally imagine a friend and like how I would talk to them about this when I rewrite my script. So those are my top tips for speakings and presentations and being invited to more conferences than you can handle.
It sounds like there's quite a bit of preparation. You don't just get up there and wing it. You're very prepared when you talk.
Oh, it's both. I'm very prepared. I have AI write the first script. I rewrite the entire script. And then I don't think I've ever given a talk where I haven't made up a joke mid-talk. So there is a little bit of ad-libbing and freestyling, just depending on how much the audience is vibing with you. But that's something that I'm personally comfortable with. Not everyone is. So if that's not your jam, write every script line, write every joke beforehand, and just execute on it in your talk.
It's probably dangerous to pre-write too many jokes, I would imagine, in a script if you don't know your audience.
Yeah.
Jokes, I think jokes are almost the purest form of iteration. Comedians very rarely get a joke right first go. All the best jokes, they're practiced and refined, and they do a version of it and they get a laugh. They do another version, they don't get a laugh, right? There's a lot of iteration that goes into getting a very funny joke.
Fortunately, a little too much of my personality goes into trying too hard to be funny. So I got my 10,000 hours on that one.
Very good.
I'm going to have to look up some of these talks you've given, especially the Taylor Swift one.
That one, I don't know if it ever made it to prime time, but anyway, go ahead.
I'm so tempted to put you on the spot now because this whole AI evals thing, as someone who's got a vague idea what's going on in this space, every time I see AI evals, I just do that sort of puppy thing. It's like I'm confused. And so I'm going to put you on the spot. What is an AI eval?
CI for your AI outputs. That's the TLDR. And if you're not,
AI outputs.
Because
okay. All right.
what is CI?
That's not
right?
Okay, that's better than most explanations I've had.
Thank you.
Sorry.
If you're familiar with what CI is, it's like, hey, before I ship this code, I want to make sure that it's going to have the outcome that I want it to, right? I want to make sure that the website's going to be pink. I want to make sure that this function is going to do this. It's the same thing for evals. There are people creating highly autonomous agents who are taking all sorts of actions on their behalf with no oversight at this point in time, and they have no testing in place to make sure that it's actually doing the right thing. Or they're doing like vibes testing. Like, well, I tried it once and it worked, so we're all good. Here's the thing. AI is not deterministic. Yeah, exactly. You're going to get a different result every single time. If you're not running that 200 times and making sure that you're getting the outcomes that you want based on like all of these different inputs, I'm scared. I think you need to be extremely cautious with that. So all of the companies that are taking AI seriously are doing evaluations. They're doing this testing. They're making sure that no matter what you put in the input, it's not going to have some horrible off-brand thing come out. And I'll give you a couple of examples of things that can go wrong. Let's say that you are like Ford Motor Company. I don't work with Ford Motor Company. I don't, speak on behalf of them, but this is just an example. If you have an AI chatbot that's recommending cars and you're not testing about whether it's recommending, a GM car or a Tesla car, that could be very off-brand. So you want to make sure that you're evaluating for that. If you have some kind of output where you haven't done proper security measures and you're giving too many permissions to your model and you're not testing all of those inputs with like different ways that people could try to hack the model, you could actually give away very sensitive data to people. So that's a huge security risk. And even just vibes, like, this example that I like to use, if you created some kind of like recommend 10 songs to me for Spotify based on my mood, and the songs that the AI is recommending aren't very good and people aren't using your product, then you want more testing in place because you need to change your system prompt. And you need to make sure that you're getting different and better results so that your product actually succeeds. So evals, extremely important. If you are not using evaluations in your product, please stop vibe testing. There are so many lightweight startups out there that are doing some kind of evaluations, or you can go use the GitHub models version, which is live on GitHub today.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation. And it took a software engineer who became a product manager to frame it in three strung together TLAs. Very good.
Yeah,
very well done.
Very good.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Even I understand now. Before we go too far, Kate, do you want to tell us a little bit about your current role at GitHub?
Yeah, that's right. I've been at GitHub for a little over 4 years now, bounced between a few different teams, had a lot of fun in the process. I am now having the most fun that I've had in my career, working on GitHub Copilot. And very specifically, I am the product manager for model release lifecycle. So which models are we releasing to Copilot? How quickly can we roll them out to all of the IDEs who are using Copilot at this point. When do we deprecate them, etc. And I'm relatively recent to this role. I'm only 3 months in, and we're making a lot of changes. But it's just been such a blast working with all of the model providers and getting to work, really on the frontier of how AI is changing the world and how we're powering that.
Incredible. It sounds like probably one of the most exciting places to be within GitHub at the moment.
Yeah, I feel extremely fortunate, and I am having an absolute blast. And I am also working until midnight regularly.
Swings and roundabouts. We started talking about AI there, and I'm very interested in 3 things. I'm going to give you 3 questions. Okay, so I want to know your thoughts on AI as a tool. So for product managers or for software engineers, but product managers specifically. I want to hear your thoughts on AI as a feature of products, and so that's obviously a big question on every product manager's mind at the moment is which part of this product becomes AI powered, AI enabled, or even replaced by AI.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just widen the aperture a little bit and go out a few orders of magnitude and think strategically about what the disruptive possibilities of this technology are. So, tool, feature, disruption. Discuss.
Whew. Wow. Okay. Lots of good questions mixed in there. Okay. How do I use AI as a tool as a product manager? Listen, I'm in AI all day, every day. I constantly have 1+ tabs open where there is some kind of AI model that I'm chatting with. So at this point, most of being a product manager is communication, right? And so I run a lot of my communications through AI real quick to be like, hey, am I getting the tone right on this? Am I getting the vibe right on this? Because I need to have positive relationships with everyone that I work with. I think another way I use it is writing docs. I've already shared this a little bit. I like AI for a first draft of docs, and then I tend to rewrite the entire thing in my own voice. But AI is really good at formatted structure. And so if I can get some kind of advantage that helps people get it and understand what I'm trying to convey, then that's really helpful for me. Third thing helps with demos. Listen, I'm a code bootcamp grad, but I work at GitHub. There's a lot of things that are like, I could use some help, right? With building this demo, with building that, with trying to understand this technical topic. And it's so helpful for me to jump in with these frontier models and ask questions and be like, how can I demo with this? How can I play with this? How can I get this running? I've run into this error. Help me figure this out. AI is so empowering for helping product managers do that, no matter what level of technical capability you have. And that's something that the most technical people I know are also doing with AI. And I can list like a bunch more use cases, but I think those are really the top ones. But the other thing that I want to stress, in case there's any product managers or even developers who are listening to this, is if you've tried it with one model and it didn't work, that doesn't mean that AI doesn't work. I probably work with at least 3 different models on any given day, and I'm going to make a strong point to not endorse any specific models or providers right now, but go experiment with the different models. Go experiment with how Gemini versus Anthropic versus every other provider talks. Think about whether that tone matches the tone that you're going for, and try and find a model that really works for you in each of these use cases, because model selection plays such a huge part of this. The other part of it is prompting. So you can just vibe prompt and be like, edit this for me real quick, make it whatever. And that's one way to do it. But if you're writing something extremely important or you're working on something extremely important, go look up prompting guides. And there's plenty of them out there, and there's different structures that you can work with, because you are going to get such different results based on the prompts that you put in. And I'm speaking specifically to product management, right? But every engineer I know who is working on the edge with AI is doing this with their models too. They're being choosy about which models. They're selecting different models based on different tasks, and they're changing their prompts depending on the model that they're working with. So these are tools, but they require you to kind of use them with some fine-tuned expertise. So developing that expertise is super important.
One thing that I've been doing as well recently is like meta prompting, which is get a prompt, get it to do a thing, and then get either another model or the same model to evaluate the thing, and then get it to rejig the prompt based on how close it was to what was going on. And you sort of get this feedback loop of prompt refinement. And then I really hate vibe coding as a term. It's really, in my book, it's just, well, it's actually, this is a quote from a mate of mine, Dan, but it's basically just vibe debt, right? You are just sufficiently generating large amounts of tech debt if you're just sitting there smashing prompts out. And so you're bang on, right? You want to curate the prompts. You want to be intentional about them. You want to catalog them. You want to manage their performance. Particularly if there's a prompt in a loop somewhere, like it's in a production loop that's doing a thing regularly, you've got to have some observability on it. You've got to be tuning it. It's super important. People are just learning these skills, right? It's a new pretty new domain, and so people are still learning how to do it. But it's definitely you definitely have to be intentional about it for sure.
If for the next 10 years we don't make a single advancement in model intelligence, which we will, but say that we didn't, we would still have more and more use cases for AI, and they would work better and better because we're just getting so much better at understanding how to use them. So I think there's a lot to be done there.
Just before we move on, the code that's being shipped into the products at GitHub, are the engineers, are they under any like guidance on how much they can produce by AI?
I think, as always, no matter what tooling you use, you're responsible for your outcomes, right? So
Yeah.
if you can outsource an entire bug to AI and have it fix it, and it's 100% AI generated, but it's good code, then it's great. But obviously at GitHub, we have a PR process.
Yeah, well, you
This is
invented the
GitHub
term.
after all. Yeah, exactly. We invented the PR process. So every line of code that gets shipped to GitHub is reviewed by one and usually multiple people before it's merged.
Yeah.
So to us,
Yeah.
I think it matters less, like, how much of the code is AI generated, and it matters more, is the code good?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
When we're thinking about how to use AI in your own product, I think there is a lot of, there's so much hype around AI right now that there's a lot of, let's just throw AI at this. And it's like a joke in the PM industry right now, is that like, oh, throw your roadmap out if it doesn't have AI in it. And I think that there is a lot of possibility with AI, but it's not just throw AI at it, because again, it's, going back to what Matthew said earlier, what question are you trying to resolve with that answer? And that's really the important part of product management, is like, what are we trying to do here with this AI? So every time a website adds a chatbot, that's not good usage of AI. Like, there's some good usage of chatbots, but there's so much more we can do that goes beyond chatbots here. And I think when I think about like good applications of AI, I think about it the same way when I think about like growth product management, if you're familiar with that. And it just comes down to like doing a thing for a user. Have you made something that a user already wants to do easier? And there's a lot of ways to kind of bake that in. So I'll give you an example that I haven't personally used yet, but I think is a cool idea. A lot of times when you're working on dev tools, to get people started, they show you in docs some kind of code block, right? So what if instead of having some kind of code block, you could just have some kind of button that is like, hey, add this to my existing code base? Like, it's that kind of thing. Like, don't just throw a chatbot at it, but like do a full task for people and do it for them so that they don't have to think about it, or that it gets a lot easier for them. It's the same principles we apply to every other part of product management, and there's nothing different going on with AI here.
I'm so glad you said that, right? Because I actually think this whole chat interface thing is a little bit of a fetish. And what I mean, and I'm choosing my words very carefully. Actually, most people doing their day to day, and you'll get the joke in a sec. Most people doing their day to day, they don't want to have to seduce a machine to get it to do a thing, right? They've got a task in mind that they want to do now, and so chatting with a machine to get it to do that task in a way that has huge variability is not. Some people want to do that, but that's not what most people want to do, have just jobs to do to get stuff done. And so I'm a bit of a pariah. I've made this comment a few times, and I'm not sure everyone agrees with me, so we'll see how it plays out. But I actually suspect that we'll lose the chat interface over time. And I think what happens, though, the capabilities of the LLMs get more and more sophisticated, but they do exactly what you just said. Some clever product manager, designer, engineer team, they work out a way to deploy the capabilities of the LLM in a way that is essentially a task activity thing. As far as the users on the glass is concerned, I've got this task, I've got this activity, I trigger something, I give it some inputs, a process happens, and the outputs are miraculous, right? And under the hood, an LLM has been invoked, but I didn't have to sit there and chat and seduce this machine to do my bidding. I think we're in a little bit of a fad phase with.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm going to make a supervision-y prediction here that is absolutely going to get me roasted. I'm not saying this is going to happen in a year. I'm not saying it's going to happen in 5 years. But I think at some point in the future, we're going to get sort of beyond screens, or beyond maybe a website UI at all. Like, there's already so many experiments with like putting the AI in your glasses, putting the AI in your ear so it talks to you all day, putting the AI in your watch if you don't want it to be directly in your ear. But I think there's going to be a lot more of like me saying to my watch, like, hey, can you book a hair appointment at that one place that I like that I went to like a month ago? And some AI behind the scenes figuring out what that means from my email or from my bookings or whatever, and booking that appointment for me. No screens necessary. And I think we all want to be on screens less. So doesn't that sound nice? We'll see how far it goes. But like, at the end of the day, what's the point of a website? It's to help me complete a task, right? So if I can complete a task without looking at a screen, why wouldn't I? Depends on the task, of course.
We could go down a rabbit hole with this. So the bigger picture, what's the bigger picture? Where does it end up? Like, do we end up in a utopia where everyone just gets to pursue their creative endeavors to the end of time? Do we end up in a dystopia where there's no creative endeavor anymore because it's all been completely commoditized to zero? We all drown in AI slop. We all become miraculously productive and enter a new industrial, a new age of agentic productivity. How do you see it playing out?
I think at the end of the day, I'm an optimist, and I am very optimistic about all of the possibilities that AI unlocks. But I also understand that there's no lightness without dark, right? And so I think that there are ways that, just like with every other technological advancement, things could go wrong or things could be misused. So one of the more impactful classes that I took in college was actually my 400 level philosophy class, which was philosophy of technology. Hilarious, because at the time I had no idea I was going to end up in tech. But it ended up being extremely topical. And I remember this paper that I read, and I can't remember who the author was, so I can't give any credit. But it was essentially talking about when is technology good versus bad. So basically, the idea is like take a look at your life and see like what's valuable to you, right? And I think cooking was the example that they used in this paper. Was like there are some people for whom cooking is pure utility. I'm one of them. I'm not good at cooking. I burn eggs. I am 29 plus or minus some years old, and I still burn eggs every single time I make them. And so for me, cooking is utility. If I can outsource that to AI, I will. I will do it the second I will. But for a lot of people that I care about, cooking is an art form. Cooking is a form of relaxation. Cooking is how they creatively express themselves. And so for them, they would be remiss to outsource that to AI, right? And if you extrapolate off of that, I think that's how you need to think about AI in your life, generally speaking. For me, I love learning. I use AI to teach me about random historical events. For other people, that's not going to be the case. And so we need to be cautious about how we use AI and where we use AI. But overall, I will say that I'm extremely optimistic that this will unlock the creativity and potential of so many people who just haven't had the skill sets that they needed pre-AI to see their vision come to life.
Kate, a little bit conscious of time because we could keep talking all day about some of these points. From a product manager point of view, where do you see the future of the product manager? Like where do you see that role going or changing in the future?
So there are some ways in which product management will remain exactly the same, and there are some ways in which it will change. The ways it will remain exactly the same is that you still need to have a deep understanding of your users and the problem that they are trying to solve, period. Your job is understanding what problem we need to solve, driving clarity, and giving teams energy to go solve that problem. None of that is going away. In terms of how technical you need to be, I think that also is going to remain relatively the same. And I know that's a surprising answer, but already in product management, you need to have some level of technical understanding in order to work with engineers effectively. However, on the other hand, AI unlocks a lot of understanding because you can go ask an AI like, wait, what was that word that they used in that meeting? How do I use that? How do I start playing with this product myself so that I can understand it better, et cetera. So I think that will remain relatively stable. The ways in which it will change are that I think our work's going to become even more critical and a lot more fast-paced. And I'll tell you why that is. I have never seen a company, or at least I've never been part of a team, where we were held back by the product manager not having enough ideas, right? Like that is, I got a backlog 6 years long that I could sit here and tick off until the cows come home, right? And beyond. And so that is not typically the holdup. The holdup is that engineers are so valuable and their skill set is so limited. And so no company can afford enough engineers to pursue every single idea that every product manager has. But now with AI, that is going to accelerate development so much, right? Because we've got people working so much faster. We can outsource entire bugs or small features in order to AI. We can have product managers start to spin up demos to explain their products or even start the beginnings of implementing that product, et cetera. So that's just going to become so much faster. And as part of that becoming faster, that means I need to work harder to keep up with my teams. And that's already happening. I have never worked this many hours at this pace in my entire career. And I was a former startup founder. Like the pace that things are moving with teams that are using AI well is astounding. And I just can't see it slowing down. If anything, I need to clone myself, or at least I need to start working at the pace of AI to move faster too, right? And I'm already trying to do that with all the AI usage that I have during the day. But I have only seen my role become more fast-paced and more critical to just keep everybody on the same page, moving in the same direction and towards the same goal as AI has sped everything up.
The thing that I keep coming back to on this point is it going to speed up and then slow down? Is it going to keep going? Is it parabolic or hyperbolic, right? And is there a world where we don't need... Sorry, I was sitting on the train using Claude, writing code, sitting there, and I was just thinking, is there a world where we don't need... no one writes software anymore at all? And maybe 1% of people write software, right? Or 99 don't. And I would lament that, because I really enjoy writing software. And I still don't know. So it's more a rhetorical question than anything else. I just wonder, is this just the next incremental change, or is there something really profound going on here? And I wonder, if it happens, it'll happen in software probably earlier than anywhere else. But if it does happen in software, that you end up disrupting software engineers, then I wonder if you end up disrupting writers and disrupting filmmakers and disrupting some of these other creative endeavors as well. And I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that quote unquote disruption is already happening, right? Like, our careers have changed irrevocably in the last few years due to AI. And there's almost no one that I know who's been untouched by that, at least in the tech industry. And so, like, change, yes, already happening, period. You mentioned, will we ever get to a point where there's no one writing software? No, can't see that happening. These AI machines, they still need oversight, right? They still need that person who has taste, who is like that high level software engineer who can look at this and say, like, that code was bad, this code was good. And so I just don't see that being replaced at all, because you just still need to have that manual touch on
Absolute
things.
Absolutely at all, or just in some time frame?
I can't imagine, at least in the remainder of my career, that we will ever get rid of software engineering. I really can't. I think it's only just gonna change how we work. It's gonna change the way that we think about work, and it's gonna change the pace that we work at. But we still need software at the end of the day. Like, at the end of the day, it's got to become ones and zeros, right? And someone has to make sure that it's the right ones and zeros, and that things aren't going to break.
Yeah. So I've gone backwards and forwards on this, and you can tell I'm kind of battling two different perspectives at the same time. But the way I look at this, when Michelangelo made the David, he said that the David was inside and he just had to chip away all the bits that weren't needed.
Yeah.
Agentic coding is a bit like that. If you just sit down and you don't know what you're doing, you generate 200,000 lines of code or 300,000 lines of code. And the difference between someone who doesn't know what they're doing and someone who does know what they're doing is they both generate 200,000 lines of code. But the person who does know what they're doing, they throw away 150.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still don't know if that'll be a thing. For someone to sit down and throw away 150, they need a career of 20 years or 30 years of software development to know which bits to throw away. And the more we go down this path, the less opportunity there is for folks coming through to get that experience to know what to throw away. So we're on an interesting place. In my heart of hearts, I think I agree with you that there's just going to be different ways that we write software, but it'll always be software, and you still need to know what you're doing. But I think, I don't know, the dial is not set all the way to one value on that equation, right? I think there's a non-zero probability that things are a bit different.
Yeah, we're at the end of the day, we're all going to wait around and see how it all plays out, right? We're going to be part of it. Yeah.
Kate, thank you so much. I realize it's early morning there, and you're probably about to start work. We will put some notes on just like where to find you, maybe some of the blog posts that you've written, anything else, where if people want to reach out to you. But yeah, that's been fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it, and hopefully in the years to come, we'll still be going and we can get you back on.
It was such a pleasure talking to you all. Thanks for having me on.